It's basically for recruiters, managers, enterprises that sort of allows you to do these things at scale, because I think personality and culture are such esoteric components that they're complex to quantify, but we're doing so poorly today in retaining people, keeping them happier, understanding our culture and evolving it in a meaningful way, that giving people tools to help them understand who they are, how they can resolve conflict at work, how they can work better with their manager, and basically keeps them there longer, happier, and more productive. And then when you have all this data, so we already have like millions of users organically without even before we started selling the B2B product. And that was a very conscious strategy because it just allowed us to decode in a statistically significant way the cultures of over 3,000 companies.
Where does this fall now? Because HR used to be kind of like, checkbox in an organization. Let's just make sure we don't make mistakes. Let's sure people, have signed all their documents and they got their direct deposit in health insurance. It was kind of like a very mundane.
I know, we make it too complex. It's actually easy, right? I think just because we refer to it as HR, people want to work with people that they like. They want a competitive paycheck, and they want to be challenged at work, right? But we add a lot of dimensions and components to it. It's at the end of the day, we're all in the people business first. The tech business is a layer on top of that, right?
So where does it land? Is this something where you're selling into the CEO or the HR department? Because it seems to me that like culture is something, since Tony Hsieh's book, Delivering Happiness, people are starting to realize it's a competitive advantage. And if the CEO and the founders are thinking about the culture, we heard Gary Tan say, for Initialized Fund, he's trying to get Initialized Fund, really dialed in terms of culture, and his startup is how that works. Where does this land?
So
to be effective.
In the early days, we're seeing a lot of interest from CEOs who care about that stuff and from heads of HR, but interestingly, marketing, because HR is starting to become a function of marketing, especially when you take employer branding into consideration with larger budgets. And if you think about the line item, right, people is probably the largest line item on any company's budget, but it's also the most behind in terms of sophistication. There was like a research study recently that said that over the next 30 years, the most value we're going to create in the economy is by better understanding people and leveraging that. So marketing is sort of becoming HR in some ways, and that's why it's becoming more sophisticated and analytical.